Have we got any progress?
It looks like we're live on YouTube now, Chair.
Excellent. Right, we'll continue then. So we'll go from item agenda number 1.
Sorry, I'm still on mute. Agenda item 1, there are no appeals against the refusal of inspection of documents. Item 2, there are no exempt items. Agenda item 3, there are no late items of business. Agenda item 4, could I ask members to declare any disclosable pecuniary interests? I'll take silence as there are none. Agenda item 5, the only apologies that we've received are from Councillor Forsyth. That's it, Chair. Do you want me to go on to the open forum?
Yes, please.
With the agenda item 6, it's the open forum, and on this occasion we've received 2 submissions, which the Chair has agreed can be included in this meeting. So the first one is from Miss Sylvia Landals on behalf of Leeds Hospital Alert, and she says, Richmond House has a reputation second to none for supportive, person-centred and effective rehab care for older people. Successful rehab for older people coming out of hospital is extremely cost-effective for both the NHS and social care. The market in care homes, respite and rehab accommodation is extremely unstable and likely to be more so after the pandemic. If Richmond House closes, private provision is unlikely to meet these needs in future. When you break up a good staffed team in a good care home, they are gone forever. So the second submission is from Stella Smales on behalf of Unison Trade Union. Leeds Unison believes it is because of COVID that the last 11 months Richmond House has been underused. LCC upgraded Richmond House extensively in 2018 to ensure that it was fit for purpose to accommodate residents comfortably. By closing Richmond House, the money that was spent will be wasted. Richmond House was awarded a CQC rating of good. Leeds Unison believes there may be an alternative to closing Richmond House. The alternative would be to turn it into a residential dementia care unit. The Green in Seacroft provided long-term care for dementia patients, but was closed by the council. The closure of the Green was strongly opposed by Leeds Unison at the time. LCC has only 10 specific beds for service users with dementia care across the city. Caring for people who are suffering from dementia is a specialist job that requires skills, understanding, patience and commitment. Leeds Unison believe if Richmond House was opened as a residential care home for specialising in dementia care, this would give people who have family members suffering from dementia the reassurance that their loved ones are being cared for in a safe environment. If Leeds City Council go ahead with the closing Richmond House, this will be another important resource that will be gone from Farsley and the west of Leeds. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Debbie. It's now agenda item number 7, which is the minutes of the last formal meeting we had, which is 9th of November 2020. Can I ask members if they are a true and correct record?
Move them, Chair.
Thank you. I've got seconder.
Seconded, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any minutes arising? I'll take that as a no. As you all know, this is a special committee meeting to discuss issues relating to Richmond House Care Home and feedback into the consultation process. It's particularly dear to my heart because my father was attended Richmond House on a number of occasions to give my mother some respite, and I shall be forever grateful to Richmond House Care Team for the help and support that they gave to my family. They were absolutely brilliant and I'm extremely thankful. So with that, can we go on to the presentation? Can I just say that Sylvia Landals, they were asked if they could posed some questions, and there wasn't enough time in their open forum, so I said that I would ask these questions on their behalf. So if you could incorporate this into your statement now. Question 1 is, has a full impact assessment been done on the implications of the closure of Richmond House on current and future residents' physical and mental health and rehabilitation potential? The second question is, what evidence is there that the proposed future placements for people who would have gone to Richmond House would be any more effective and safe? And the third question is, the council employed hospital social workers are working with the people in the 4 wards in the Beckett wing at St James's Hospital and Wharfdale General Hospital, outsourced to Villa Care, which all need improvement, according to the latest Care Quality Commission reports. Why not transfer directly to Richmond House, which is a good care home? So if you could just incorporate that in your report. And I will now hand over to Kath Roth, who is going to present it.
I just need to double check whether or not Councillor Charlwood wants to make any introductory remarks before I go into the detail.
I can do, if that's okay with the chair.
Yes, please go ahead. I know you've got to be away at 2.
Yeah, thank you. And also there are some points raised in the open forum and by the questions that you've just raised are political in nature as well. And that's obviously my role in the adult social care portfolio. So thank you very much. So just to preamble the more detailed responses, I just want to say that it has been a really difficult time in local authority finances. And actually, since I've been a cabinet member, which is almost 5 years now, it has been hard and getting harder. So in the open forum, it was referred to the Green closing down to residential dementia patients or service users a number of years ago. And that was extremely difficult. But what we did at the time was negotiate with the NHS that we should modernise our facilities that we have by ceasing to provide the residential care that was council care homes, which were not particularly well used or went full, although the service provided was excellent, into a more sustainable model funding wise that was that the NHS could contribute to in intermediate care. And at that time, we put Richmond House into the mix with that, because Richmond House is a respite care, intermediate care style of care facility, and it is excellent. And we really value it, and we would not be making these changes if we had not had significant funding cuts and a legal need to balance our budgets in the council. So at that time, the NHS looked at their intermediate care, designed what they wanted to get from it and how much they were willing to spend on it. And they didn't commission Richmond House within that group of services. There were 3 other sites that were chosen, but sadly, not Richmond House. So at that time, we decided to keep funding Richmond House from the council ourselves, because we recognised its value and its excellent service. And we like I say, we would not be closing it or proposing these closures if we had the money to keep it going. So we've just got this year, we've had a financial impact of COVID of £163 million. And I think, we all know that there's gaps all around the country in our budgets and how local authorities are able to plan their budgets going forward. It's about a 20% reduction in our spend, and that from our entire budget is huge. So we're going to see some difficult decisions being made. However, if we could make something happen where we could commission this service with the NHS, we absolutely would do. But unfortunately, it was ruled out of that commissioning framework. But I'm open to that still being on the table. And if we can still have those conversations, I would really like to see that happen. But just wanted to set the scene really, and just state how hard it really is. And I didn't come into politics to do this. It's not nice at all. But the points that were raised in the open forum have been considered and brought into the decisions that we've got to so far. So I'll hand over to Kath. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just going to give some overview remarks and then probably go into the detail of responding to the questions that were posed by various individuals, because that'll probably give the depth of reply that you're seeking. So just to remind people, so Richmond House, it's a 20-bedded residential home. And in the scheme of things, 20 beds is quite small these days for a residential home, and it has a real impact on the unit cost and how we staff it. It ceased being a rehabilitation unit in 2017, as Councillor Charlwood said, where it's being decommissioned. So we've been trying to find alternative uses for it. And settled on it being focused on short stay support, but it doesn't have any therapeutic input going into it. So I suppose you could refer to it more as a place where you might convalesce, or it's somewhere we can step somebody up into to work with an individual, perhaps at a point of crisis or care breakdown, to prevent an admission into hospital. And we do have a small number of people who use it for short breaks. The actual occupancy in the previous year was even worse. It was 54%. So the occupancy in this financial year has been better. So it's not a COVID thing that it's had low occupancy. The occupancy was, as I said, even worse in the previous year. I think it's probably best to respond to the individual comments about the rationale to either close or to keep it open, because the wider context of both the care market, the different user groups that we are trying to meet the needs of across our whole base and in partnership with the NHS, explains some of the reason why we have put it forward for closure. As Councillor Charlwood said, this is in the context of having to make really, really significant savings. And some of the considerations I've had to bring to bear is, how can I sustain adult social care as a functioning entity with, yes, a mixture of in-house and independent sector? What is the quality of that independent sector now? What are local available services looking like? And who do we struggle with in terms of meeting their needs? So if we do have an in-house service, what strengths can we play to? So I'll cover some of that in my reply, but if you just bear with me, I'll just have a look at so Sylvia Landell's question. So just to remind everybody, it doesn't provide rehab at the moment, but we do have a citywide rehab offer across 3 different bases, which are geographically dispersed. So if somebody needs rehab, they can get it either from our Northwest Recovery Hub, our East Recovery Hub, or our South Recovery Hub, and therefore actually have a recovery opportunity much closer to their home. Whereas Richmond House at the time, you had to travel from across the entire city, and we know that it's important for people to have family visits, and so being much closer to where you live ordinarily is an important factor as to whether or not somebody would consider a transfer to one of our recovery hubs. In terms of the market in care home respite rehab accommodation being unstable, I don't think it is unstable. Actually, one of the things COVID has done is created a lot of capacity in the residential care sector. There are a lot of empty beds, so supply has never been so good. So the bit about private provision unlikely to meet their needs, I don't agree with. The rehab capacity in the city is commissioned by the CCG. We are a major provider of that in partnership with Leeds Community Health and a number of independent sector organisations. they're all in that business and committed to providing really high quality rehab. So I don't agree with the premise that it's unstable. I don't think that's the case. If I go on to the other question from Stella about it being underused, yes, the occupancy has been low, but at the end of the day, we can't force people to come to Richmond House. And because we have other choices in the city, either for rehab or for short breaks, which again is closer to people's homes, we suspect people are sort of voting with their feet. If they can have good quality respite closer to their relatives, they're choosing to do so. So we're unable to generate the footfall and the use of Richmond House that takes its occupancy level higher up. About using it for residential dementia unit, I think this argument is very well rehearsed. We just certainly didn't go through all the pain of closing the 3 care homes that we did in 2016, only to then reopen something. So in terms of residential dementia care, we have sufficient supply in the city. And that's not where we have a gap in the market. Where we have a gap is for people with the most complex needs who need nursing care. Now, what we are doing is we are piloting in our South Recovery Hub 10 ring-fence beds for people with complex dementia, but we are only able to do that because nursing care is provided by LCH. They have to be a lead organisation, so we can't provide nursing care by ourselves. The law doesn't allow us to do it, but by partnering with somebody, we can then do it in an establishment, and this is what we're testing out at the South Recovery Hub. I think the other thing I would say is really excellent dementia care. My preference would be that it's in a purpose-built building. We know that environmental design makes a big difference around supporting or mitigating the impact of dementia, and Richmond House, with the best will in the world, is quite an old style care home. It doesn't really have the environmental characteristics that you would hope to have for really high quality dementia care. So for all of those reasons, I wouldn't look to Richmond House to provide dementia care. I think there are better options elsewhere in the city. Sorry, I'm just trying to catch up with all the questions. So has a full impact assessment been done on the implications? So we will do that at the end of the consultation process. Members will be aware that any report we bring to Executive Board, we do an equalities impact assessment, and that will pick up issues around physical mental health, aspects of people's protected characteristics. And yes, we can pick up on the issue of rehab. So it'll be done at that point at the conclusion of all the consultation. The next question, I think, was what evidence is there that the proposed future placement for people who would have gone to Richmond House will be any more effective or safe? So as Councillor Charwood mentioned, we've done an awful lot of work on improving the quality of the independent sector. We are now at 86% of care provision being good or outstanding. And we had a look at what is the offer within 5 miles of Richmond House. So we've got 21 care homes with a total of 932 beds within 5 miles. 16 are rated as good, 1 is outstanding, 4 are awaiting an inspection outcome. We've got 14 of those 21 are CQC dementia registered, 15 are residential and 2 are nursing, and 4 offer both. So our view is that there is some good quality alternative independent sector provision out there, and we don't have to solely rely on in-house services. And then I think the final question that was asked was the council employed hospital social workers are working in the 4 wards at Beckett Wing, at St James's and Wharfdale. These are the villa care wards, as we call them, which are CQC rated as requires improvement. Why not transfer them directly to Richmond House? Really simply, it's because it's nursing care, and we can't register Richmond House as a nursing home. We are legally prohibited from running nursing care. We could only do it if it was a partnership with a lead NHS organisation that has the legal cover to provide nursing care. So that's why we can't do it. But I think also we wouldn't necessarily want to discharge people from that ward to go to Richmond House and then go home all within a few days. We just want to get people home, so we wouldn't put another step in somebody's care pathway. So I hope that covers everything that was posed in the questions. I think maybe it'd be better, we've given you the factual information. If there's any further Q&A, we'll try and cover those questions that you have.
Thank you to Kath Ross and Councillor Charwood for that report. I'm now going to ask members to come in with questions, and I'm going to give everybody a chance to ask a question. I'll just go round all of the members in turn because I know you will all have questions. So starting with Councillor David Blackburn.
Sorry, Chair, to interrupt, but wouldn't it be a good idea if we had the officers give us the factual statement about the consultation first, because that will also raise some questions, I think.
Yeah, I'm happy for that to happen.
So you want me to describe how we're undertaking the consultation? Is that the query, Councillor Blackburn?
It's Councillor Carter, and it's
oh, sorry.
It is, yes. I want you to go through the timescales, please, in particular.
Okay, so even though we announced the proposal to close, I think it was the October Executive Board, we didn't commence formal consultation till the 4th of January because we didn't feel it was right to try and run consultation over the Christmas period. So that started on the 4th of January and it's going to run for 12 weeks, concluding on Friday the 26th of March at 5 p.m, at which point we will pull together everyone's comments and feedback with a view to going to June Executive Board. So that's the timeline.
Thank you. Can I now bring in Councillor David Blackburn?
Yeah, I'm going to leave most of this to Councillor Anne Blackburn because it's more her area than mine. But I'll just say, I know that another chair commented on the fact that was it our father was in there. Well, my mother has been in Richmond House, and when we used to do rehab care there. She sadly died since. But on 2 other occasions, she was sent to the far side of Leeds, where for me to get there, I had to use 2 buses. Was nowhere near where my sister lived and nowhere near where my mother lived. And I just found some of the comments that Kath Rock come up that, oh, it's not because, people live in West Leeds and want something there where they live. They do not want something in East Leeds or in South Leeds. And it really annoyed me what you were saying there. That establishment was really good. The alternatives that were given to my mother while she was still alive were absolutely hopeless. And they were privately owned. And we've got to come to terms with it. Never mind budget situation. We have got to come to terms with this. What we have got to do is offer our people something that's worthwhile having. And it seems to me that some of the reasons for closing it are, are self-fulfilling prophecies, like we've done things in the past where we put people off from going to go in there and making them go somewhere else that's inferior. You know, that's all I've got to say. I'll pass on to Anne if that's all right, Chair.
Yes, is that all right, Chair? Shall I come in?
Yes, go ahead, Anne.
Yes, well, I agree with what Councillor David Blackburn said, and it annoys me that such places as Richmond House, anything that's council, quite frankly, when it comes to adult social services, seems to be down. Sometime or another, they're going to get round to closing it. You can bet your life on that. We had a very good old people's home in Wortley, and that closed. And it wasn't because people didn't like it. People loved it. A lot of them ended up going over the road to the private home, which they didn't like because they just didn't have the amenities that they had at the council home. We know small council homes, the staff bend over backwards, you know, they bring round ice cream in the nice weather, etc. You don't get that private home. All the council facilities, as far as adult social services are going, and this fact that nobody wants to go there, well, clearly I can say that when Richmond House was a rehab unit for people coming out of when it were a place where they came out of hospital and they stayed a week or two there before they went home. It was brilliant. My mother-in-law been in there twice and everybody loved it. And yeah, when she went to a place in East Leeds and that, they did just what they had to do basically. The place itself was really quite badly designed for elderly people, etc., etc. But no, what this council wants to do is they want to give all the money to the private care because it's easy for them to do that. And, you know, our staff who's brilliant then, well, end up being thrown out and the people then just get shunted where they can. And it really infuriates me. And you can do as many consultations as you like, but let's be honest, we know no matter who says what in those consultations, quite frankly, the people concerned have made their mind up already. And yes, the council need the money, not disputing that. But why is it that good facilities have to go and we throw the money at private homes and private facilities, which in a lot of cases just are not as good? There's something wrong. Definitely, we should be thinking of the people out there and thinking what we're doing with our money and put it where it's best placed. The other thing is as well, we need somewhere in West Leeds. All very well saying the stuff in East Leeds, stuff in South Leeds, but there should be a place in each part of the city. That's where we started out from a year or two ago. It's not fair that people have got to be sort of shunting from one part of the other to another. And we have to bear in mind a lot of people don't have cars. In fact, as I'm concerned, I don't want to have cars. But, you know, we've got to bear all this in mind. And we're not doing, despite what people have said this morning, officers have said this morning, we've just got to try and localise things more and ideally keep the few facilities this council's got left to help elderly people in adult social care. We need to keep them, not be giving 5,000 reasons why we can't. So I'm sorry, I've ranted on a bit, but I think you can tell it's something that I feel very strongly about. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Blackburn. Can I bring in Councillor Charwood to reply to that, please?
Thank you, Chair. There were just a number of political points there. I think it's important that I can answer some of those rather than ask officers to. respond to them. So I think Councillor Blackburn, I think you know very well that I do not want to be in a position like this where we are suggesting these sorts of changes. If we could keep it, if we could keep all of our homes, we would. The problem we have is when you have £50 million to find from a budget of £250 million, what else do you cut instead? So we've gone through all of the available efficiencies, or whatever you want to call them, cuts to most of us. You know, we get to a point where we have to make really, really hard decisions and really unpleasant decisions that we know we don't want to do. But the point you are making about staff is wrong. It's simply wrong. When we closed the last few care homes and turned them into intermediate care facilities, any member of staff who wanted a job got a job. We did not make any compulsory redundancies, and that was hugely important to us in the council. And I think you should perhaps reflect on that and give us a bit of credit for that, because we've not got rid of anybody, and I think that's important to make. And if you would like to tell us what you would like to cut instead for £50 million, I'd be absolutely delighted to hear it, because we can all say we don't want to lose services, but we have to make these decisions, otherwise we don't keep our bottom line. So I would just like to push back a little bit on that. Nobody wants to make these decisions and these cuts. If we could have an intermediate care facility in West Leeds, then I would want to have it at Richmond House. Ideally, we would like to rebuild it, make it bigger and more beautiful, and have it in West Leeds. But that was commissioned from the NHS, and they haven't included that in their commissioning. So unless they revisit that, we can't deliver that for you. And as it stands, we need to find these savings. So I'll let Kath carry on with the other points.
Sorry,
Just
Chair.
before I bring Kath Ross in, can I just...
Well, can I just come straight back about something that Councillor Chalmers said? And I do have a...
Wait a minute, Anne. Let me just say this.
Okay.
I want to make sure that we're not getting too political, because community committees are not meant to be political. So mentioning of cuts is highly political. So please, can we just keep it down, please? Okay, Anne, go ahead.
No, it was just something that was stated where it said that I said those people have been thrown out of a job in, when we've closed homes, etc. I did not say that. By the nature of the fact, if you close a home, the people working for us lose the job that they have had with that home. It goes without saying. Does not mean that you try to get them into another home, which could probably be the other side of Leeds or whatever, but I never said that they were thrown out of a job completely. What I said was those people lost their jobs at that home, because if you close a place down, the jobs that they are doing at that home, like the people that are resident at that home, can no more be there. So I just want to make that quite clear what I said. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Blackburn. Anne Roth, do you have anything else to say on that, or are you moving on to the next question?
No, maybe next question. I would certainly just reiterate the fact we're proposing the closure of Richmond House. It's no reflection on the staff. They're absolutely brilliant, and I would agree with you. It breaks my heart to propose this.
Thank you, Kath. So next, got Councillor Peter Carlisle.
Thanks, Chair. I've just got a couple of questions. Do you want me to rattle through everything and let officers come back after that? I mean, as we've heard, and I'm sure we've all received, especially the Carley and Farsley members, that the numerous bits of correspondence from people just saying how good the care in Richmond House is. And I haven't got personal experience of knowing people that have been in there, but obviously it's just a couple of streets away from my house, and I know I've had so many people commenting that friends and relatives were in there and the care they received was absolutely excellent, which I think is absolute credit to the staff there, and to the service really for what they've provided. a couple of my questions have been touched on, but I wanted to go into it further, just really seeing what we can do to look at. We've got that conversation about under occupation of the service, and the funding being removed, so to speak, by the CCG was something that happened before I was elected as a member. But so thanks for giving me some of the detail around that, which is going to be one of the questions. But have we sought to have that conversation again with the CCG or with other NHS bodies? Because I think obviously there were some comments that came in, the points to the open forum of things that could come. Kath has responded to some of those, but have we had that conversation around whether anyone else has an idea of what we could seek to continue at Richmond House? Obviously, the removal of the funding a couple of years ago seems to have been the thing that really, or 4 years ago, is it now? Time flies. It seems to have been the thing that maybe caused some of that under occupation, that caused some of these difficulties that we're facing right now. And I just wondered whether those conversations were carrying on with those and other NHS bodies, if they had any ideas of what we could do. The other things to think about in this really are, obviously, we've got at the moment, we're expecting at some point a green paper on adult social care to come, and that might come up with differences in funding it. There's also work going on around whether or not CCGs will exist in a few years' time. Are we looking at what the opportunities there could mean for what Richmond House could be? Whether that does bring some of the investment we'd need to change what Richmond House is into something that's a more modern facility that would be able to get that use, or to rebuild it to something else, or is that something, for instance, we'd seek to do following the closure, to see what more it could be if that proposal comes through for closure after the consultation?
Thank you, Councillor Carlow. Kath, could you reply to that, please?
Yeah. In terms of the uses where the NHS is the commissioner, there only really are two uses. It is that rehabilitation function, or to have it as a nursing home. The CCG will be recommissioning its community care beds over the next 12 months. If anything, they're likely to commission less beds. They possibly haven't got the numbers right. And the problem we face with anything being commissioned from Richmond House is, because it's 20 beds, its unit costs are always going to be higher than a 40-bed unit, where you can just arrange your staffing rosters more efficiently. And Debbie's on the call, she could probably say more about that if you wanted the detail. In terms of the green paper on social care, I think I'll be pulling my pension by the time that ever gets published. There's no sign on the horizon that the green paper will be brought forward, and from recent remarks from the Prime Minister, it seems the focus is more on the relationship between the citizen and the state as to what they pay for their care. So with an emphasis on preventing people having to sell their home to pay for care costs, rather than any indication of an injection of cash into social care to help either raise people's rates of pay or to be able to afford to keep in-house services more. In terms of the reorganisation proposed with CCGs potentially going, I think that actually is more of a risk to us. We have a really constructive relationship with our CCG. It is Leeds focused. I think one of my anxieties about the reconfiguration is possibly a risk of money drifting out of Leeds and migrating to other areas of financial pressure in the West Yorkshire integrated care system. So I think it's more of a threat than an opportunity. I'll leave it there.
You happy with that, Councillor Carlow?
Yeah, that gives some detail, I think. We'll see as the discussion goes on. There was just the comment about what happens if after the consultation we indicate for closure of that home, then what's the next life that would come out then? is that a conversation to see what comes out of the proposal, out of the consultation, or is that something, will it be sold immediately? Will it be looking at what else could be offered there? Because I think
yes, okay, there's a commitment to use the site to develop HRA supported housing, so basically council housing. Quite what nature that takes, I think we'd have to have a look at the site. So I know there's been quite a lot of interest. Could we develop an extra care scheme on it? But I think our view is that the site is just too small to do that. So I think some of the consultation would depend, you know, what does the local community think is a priority? If council housing was to be developed on that site, should it be general needs, or could it be sheltered housing for older people, given that the site is connected with services and the benefit of older people in that ward? Would it want to be ring fenced for something like that? So I think there's a range of opportunities. I don't think you would ever be able to sell it as a going concern, as a care home, because it's just not fit for purpose anymore. It doesn't have ensuite. It's got quite narrow corridors, and again, it doesn't have that sort of minimum capacity of 40 beds you would need. So I just don't think any current pairs, and also I think we have an oversupply of residential care at the moment. So I couldn't see anybody taking it unless they wanted to convert it to nursing care. And again, I'd just go back to the physical state of the building. Doesn't really lend itself to people with very high mobility problems, which is the profile you get in a nursing home these days.
Thanks, Kath. I think if you ask the local community what they want, they're going to say they want to keep Richmond House as it is. Can I ask Councillor Seary to come in now?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm going to let Councillor Trish Smith lead on this, if that's okay. Thank you.
Trish, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, a lot of what I was going to say has come up, Peter particularly. I wonder whether, you know, the consultation, it went to exec board in October. So that's, you know, quite a wait to get to now before we brought that. I think we could have had quite a good consultation period prior to the Christmas break. So I think that's been a little bit of a missed opportunity there. I think, you know, we could have been out speaking to residents and the local community and seeing what was needed. Another one of my points really is going back to Peter's point, but broadening it. The funding was removed, and so the council chose to continue to fund the facility. At that point, what conversations were had with the QCQ to see if there was anything that they could offer at that point to either part fund it or maybe upgrade services, etc., in there, so that we weren't in this position now. Another point that I'd like to make is if we lose this facility in the west of the city, we might have beds, but at what cost? This is the only publicly funded facility that I'm aware of. So have people realistically got £1,000 a week to pay to put somebody into short-term residential care? Yes, there might be a package. That package would then be funded by the council. So if the council are funding that, why can't they fund this? You know, I think we're at great risk of creating a situation where we're actually bed blocking for the NHS. So would the NHS come on board with us and work with us on this? It's not just a fiscal cost here. We've got mental health issues. We've got family situations. we've got strain on local services. If we discharge a person straight from hospital back into their own home, how is that going to impact them? How is that going to impact local services? At what cost does that come? So I'd like to get a better understanding of what is actually the net saving to this closure. Sorry, proposed closure. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Trish-Smith. Councillor, could you reply to that, please?
The bit about the consultation, so the time period that we are running the consultation has made no difference. It would always have been 12 weeks, so we haven't truncated it by starting it in January. I guess it's just a judgment call that we felt so close to Christmas, it wasn't appropriate. So I can just give the commitment that we certainly haven't shortened the consultation period in order to commence it from January. I mean, when the funding was removed, yes, we had very robust conversations with the CCG. We obviously value Richmond House, thought it provided a good service, but we could see the argument by the CCG that they could, in terms of the three premises they went for, that we are a provider of, they could get more beds by doing it that way. And we really struggled with the unit cost, as I said, coming back to it being 20 beds. Unless we were willing to subsidise it, we couldn't get to a point of the unit costs that they were willing to pay, and we didn't have the money to subsidise it. We need our services to be able to break even. So you were talking about beds at what cost. Just to be clear, the charge people have for using a respite bed is the same, whether or not it's a council facility or private sector. So there just is a charge, and then people are means tested and they contribute towards the cost of their care based on their income assessment. So it's cheaper if you get it from the in-house compared to the private sector, because that would be inequitable. So that argument doesn't hold. In terms of bed blocking, we perform extremely well in terms of number of delays that are attributable to social care. It's something like 0.5%. We are really good at getting people out, and actually, and increasingly we're seeing this as a result of COVID as well. People want to go home if at all possible. That is their first choice, and we are good at getting people home. We have the skill service, which is an in-house service. It's our reablement service, and we go and support people in their own home. They still get therapeutic support, and our skills enablement workers act as agents of recovery. And that's how things are shifting. Increasingly, going into a care home is absolutely the last thing that people are choosing to do. And yes, some of that's driven by COVID, but I think that hesitancy to go into a care home is going to remain for certainly as long as we've got COVID. So if people's wish is to go home and we can do it safely, we will absolutely support them to do so.
Trish, do you want to come back on that?
I quite agree that, if people are safe to go home, then that's absolutely the right thing to do. I've not had experience of Richmond House myself, but my grandmother was in a similar situation. However, there were times when I felt that she was maybe bed blocking. I felt that there were times when she was returned to her home when she maybe shouldn't have been returned to her home. So that's my personal experience. I'm not going to complain about what the system does, because the system is the system at the moment. But I do think that in terms of this, I think we need to look at the broader picture. We're returning people back to their homes who are probably going to be on their own 95, if not higher percentage of the day. is that the right thing for them? You know, are they going to be better in a facility, a short-term facility such as Richmond House, where, you know, they can get the round-the-clock care, they can see people, they can get their mental health back to where it needs to be in order to then get them back to their own home.
Thank you, Trish. Can I bring Councillor Mark Harrison now?
Yes, part of my question was actually just answered then. I was going to ask about the cost per head for private and for NHS. But the other point I want to bring is, what is the forecast for age of people getting more? Because we're living longer, so surely we're going to need more beds in the future. So shutting something down like this that we may need in 5 years' time may cost us more to rebuild in 5 years' time. Have they looked at the cost of keeping it open and running to having to put a new unit in place in 5 years' time when our people are, there's more older people, should I say, if you know what I'm saying? Thank you.
So we are looking at that. So when you look to the future, what I would say at the moment, we have oversupply of residential care. And if you look at the Outer West area, we've got an oversupply of residential care by 304 beds. The future is likely to need a mixture of extra care housing. If you can have your support needs met in residential care, you can by and large have your support needs met in extra care, unless perhaps you're living with dementia. And older people have been really clear in our consultation, if at all possible, they would rather retain their own front door. And I think that's very much been recognised by the council, embarking on a very ambitious but positive extra care housing development programme, which we're increasingly, I think we'll get to about 1,000 units of extra care over the next 2 or 3 years. We probably still need to double that. So if we're going to invest in bricks and mortar, I would invest more in that type of provision. That has been absolutely exacerbated by COVID. We have seen an absolute dramatic fall in people choosing to go into residential care at the moment. And we have seen quite a marked expansion of people asking for support in their own home. So our home care has gone up and our residential care has gone down. Where I think there is a need for growth is around nursing care, and particularly to support people with dementia. And that will be the growth area. And if you're going to develop dementia care, then I would say, if at all possible, you do a new build, because you can design in a dementia-friendly built environment in a way that you cannot really adapt an old property like Richmond House for. So that's the future.
Mark, do you want to come back on that?
Yes, I would, please. You mentioned about the drop in people wanting to go into residential care at the moment. That is because of COVID, because people don't want to go in and catch COVID. So I think as soon as we come out of the COVID, everybody's got the injection, the vaccination, I think it's going to raise again. So surely we've got to put that into the plan, because if we don't plan for that and it happens, you've got yourself in a situation where you're closing places and there's nowhere for people to go. That's it. Thank you.
So I've got 304 surplus beds mapped against the population needs for the next 5 years in your area. We have an oversupply of residential care in Leeds. We are not short of it at all. So before I held on to anything, I would only consider hanging on or building new premises once all of that had been exhausted. So we are some considerable way off it. I can understand why people want to retain Richmond House. It's got a great reputation. It's a local service if you live in that ward. I absolutely understand why people want it. You know, as Councillor Charlwood said, we wouldn't be having this conversation if the council wasn't in such a very challenging financial situation.
Councillor Andrew
Okay,
Clark.
thank you. Thank you, Chair.
you. Thank you, Chair. I think we're at risk of being sidetracked here. And I'll come back to that in a moment. So I have a number of comments and questions. The first one is people in the west of Leeds, and Farsley, Carvley, Pudsey in particular, can, I think, be forgiven for feeling extremely sceptical about these proposals when it's the third time it's happened. Every time adult social care has been looking for substantial funding opportunities, shall we say, Richmond House has come to the fore. So that, I think, is why I'm sceptical. It seems as though, you know, there's a list somewhere tucked away in someone's drawer that comes out every so often. And a lot of people believe, and I would like some reassurance on this, that it's almost deliberate. The usage goes down because it's not promoted. And that becomes, as David Blackburn said, a self-fulfilling prophecy. And that really is not acceptable. And I have to say, Kath, I mean, you made the point yourself. There are places in the north, in the south, and in the east. That's exactly the point we're making. There are not in the west in the same sort of venue. Quite a lot's been said about the CCG withdrawing funding. In point of fact, what happened was they said they could fund 3, and Richmond House was the bottom. You may have wanted the funding for Richmond House, but it was the bottom of your list, wasn't it? And talking about Richmond House as though it was an elderly people's home, of course, completely blows smoke and mirrors around, because it isn't. It's a respite home. And it is as much help and use to the people taking the short breaks as it is to their family members who desperately need their loved ones, their dependents, to be able to get that sort of a break. Councillor Amanda Carter mentioned our personal knowledge, and it goes way beyond that to people who've had relatives having the respite breaks in Richmond Care over the past in Richmond House over the past few years. Everyone's been extremely appreciative of what's provided, and you can't quantify and you can't put a price on how long it keeps those people who get that respite care out of full-time accommodation and allows them to go home after a short break. And I really do want some assurance that this consultation is what it says on the tin, a consultation. And listening to a lot of what's been said, you've already made your minds up. Well, you know, that in effect dissuades people from participating in the consultation, and it mustn't. And I would implore people listening to this. And let me tell you, there's a massive petition in circulation to keep Richmond House open, to have their 6penn'orth. We really shouldn't be talking about what we could put in its place, because that's exactly the place we shouldn't be going. It's a presumption that you've made your minds up, and I think you need to dispel that today. And I know that means you would have to find the money elsewhere. But I'm sorry, Councillor Charlwood's gone, and I'll say this and keep it as non-political as possible. But it's true, and it's in all the briefing reports, that the council has a funding gap of £118 million in the coming financial year across the board. Only 59 million of that is COVID related. And a lot of that is being offset by government grant. The rest of the money that we're short, a lot of it comes from decisions this council has made itself. And to be frank, if we're serious about the importance of facilities like this, then there are plenty of places, not in adult social care, but in other parts of the council where the money could be found. And I really do want to have some reassurance that this is a proper consultation. The council are going to a whole string of these at the moment, and residents are extremely sceptical, and right to be. And you need to give reassurance that any suggestions that come forward will be properly looked at, that it isn't a foregone conclusion. And I'll finish on that, Chair. I feel very strongly about this.
Thank you, Councillor Carter. Kath, would you like to reply to that, please?
Just a few comments then. So this is the first time in the 6 years now I've worked for Leeds, the Richmond House has been formally put forward for closure. So it might have been talked about informally, but certainly this is the first time it's been brought forward as a formal proposition. We do promote it amongst social workers as a step up, step down facility. They know it's there. You know, it's a really useful facility.
Kath, we've lost your sound.
Oh,
Kath, you seem to be on mute.
No, does help if you turn your microphone on. Do apologise. I'll start again. So I was saying I've worked for the council for nearly 6 years now, and this is the first time I've formally brought Richmond House forward for a closure proposal. So it might have been bandied about informally, but certainly this is the first time it's formally been brought forward. We do actively promote it as a facility for our social workers to make use of if they are trying to prevent an admission or to support a discharge. But as I said, we can't force people to go to it if there's something closer to home they'd rather go to as a temporary placement. In terms of short stay, there's actually only 6 people that regularly use it for planned respite. And we do have alternative in the provision, alternative provision in the area that could provide that elsewhere. Regarding the CCG, we did put it forward as our proposal for our community care beds as part of our bid, but they made the decision which facilities they wanted to commission care from. And as I said, we struggled with the unit cost for Richmond House. It was over £1,000 per bed, and the CCG had set a cap of £1,000 that they were willing to pay. So it just wasn't attractive in terms of the cost envelope they had. And I would respectfully say it's members who make the decision, not officers, as to whether or not this goes forward. So I can't say it's a foregone conclusion. I've been asked to bring forward proposals to make a savings target, and that's what I've been brought for. That's what I brought forward. If I was to be asked to come up with some alternatives, I could do that. They would all be equally unpalatable, and it's what is the least worst choice. And ultimately, it will be a decision made by members.
Andrew, do you want to come back on that?
Yes, Chair. I mean, I accept that the decision will ultimately be made by members. What I'm trying to establish is there is at least a resemblance of a level playing field, and that if suggestions come forward as to ways of keeping it operational, I just have this. I think there's a saying: "Man plans and God laughs," and it's all very well looking at projections for the future about what beds we'll need and not need. But look at how COVID hit us out of the blue, less than 12 months ago, and where we are now. And Kath, I make this point. We were told that the CCG was desperately looking for beds to treat people, not to treat people, but where people could recuperate, not from COVID, but from other minor things, so that beds were made available in the hospital for COVID cases. And they were asking across the city for those. Now, to me, it's folly to close a facility like Richmond House when we are in such a national crisis.
Kath?
Well, what we offered them and what they asked for is experimenting with things within our in-house provision. So we've got 9 or 10 designated beds at Northwest. We've got the 10 complex dementia at South, and we've got 10 discharge to assess beds, they're called, for people with dementia at East. Shona, can I just bring you in whether or not there was any further conversations about using Richmond House for D2A beds?
The D2A beds that they were looking for was within a particular price envelope, which we cannot achieve at Richmond House because of the reasons you've articulated previously, Kath. The size of the building, the overhead costs are stretched between 20 beds rather than between 40. So that means that we just can't get the price down to the level that the CCG obtains from the independent sector.
Thank you.
Thank you. I've just got one comment to make. All the points have really been made, but I just want to underline something, Kath, that there isn't any provision in the west of Leeds. It's all in other parts of the city. And it seems to me that the west of Leeds is always the one that loses out, and it's not right and it's not fair. I often hear from my constituents how desperate they are for some kind of respite care. So I find it hard to believe that, I mean, lots of them don't know about it. So I find it hard to believe that it's not been promoted through social workers, and maybe it's not been promoted well enough, because I do hear this a lot. The other thing I hear is that people are being sent home too soon from hospitals and they need that halfway house. And I know you say that perhaps it's not suitable for that, but having been round Richmond House and knowing it well, I think it would be all right. So I would like to thank you for coming here and talking to us today. It's really helpful, and thank you to all the other officers. Thank you again. Bye-bye. Right, do we have any other business?
Only we need to have the informal meeting on the funding before our next full meeting in the first week in March. So we need that in February. We discussed it last time, Chair, if you remember, about the Mike was very kindly offered to look at all the standard funding things, and we could at least go through those and see where we are with them.
Yeah.
Just raise some, Amanda, as well. It's regarding the scheme for computers. It struck me last night about this. We didn't mention what happens to them when they are finally come to the end of their life. You know, are they going back to fuzzy computers, or are the schools keeping them, or what? Because I don't want to be in a position, as I once was when I was chair of Roseville, where I have the press getting on to me because there's a load of computers being dumped in some East African country, which is what happened then. And we give them to these charities out of, in good faith. So all I'm concerned about is that we have a strategy for their disposal, end of life disposal. That's all. Okay.
Yeah, Simon, can you shed some light on that?
Yes, so these devices will be added to the school's network, and they're handed to the school, and it's for the schools to manage as they would with their existing devices. If another project comes up and we need to recycle them again, but it's the devices are getting donated to the schools, and then the schools are managing that process then, and then we're not in that decision of, because we don't know who needs these devices, who don't need the devices, and it's the schools that are making that decision because they can see whose needs are bigger, is the greatest.
Does that answer your question, David?
I suspect that the school will have a process of getting rid of technology that's no good and in a proper way. But I think it just needs mentioning, and then that we don't find ourselves doing something, and then in a few years' time getting criticised for actually doing the right thing. Yeah.
David, I well remember the egg on your face at Roseville. You're quite right to raise it. I'm sure. I'm sure that. Yeah, we just make sure that the schools, and I'm sure they have an ethical way of disposing of when the lifespan's done.
They've got a legal right, part of the is it the WE legislation, where they have to dispose of property in the correct manner.
Right. That's correct.
Yeah.
Right, good, fine. Right, this meeting, Mike, we need to schedule it early Feb.
So our next committee meeting is the 17th of February. So I was planning on bringing the list of all those rolling projects to that meeting so that we can have a chat about ring fences for the next year.
Yeah, is that acceptable?
It's not the start of March. Outer West is 17th of February, I think we're on.
I'm getting lots of thumbs up. Everybody happy?
One of the reasons is that we need to get to the bottom of precisely what the council's proposing to do with its organisation known as Leeds Lights, and we can't be left. We'll need months to sort the Christmas lights out properly if there's any problem with the Leeds Lights setup, if you follow my meaning. So we need to be planning PDQ, to be frank.
Yeah.
Chair, just a quick one. Just based on that, is there any particular deadline then? Because obviously when we've had commissioning rounds, we've given groups and organisations a date at which any applications had to come in by. Is there a date Mike would suggest that things would have to be there in order to come forward to that February meeting?
Chair, we don't want a commissioning round, do we? We want to look at the standard things which usually involve the council, and then we look at, you know, if they can guarantee to deliver a project over a set period of time. We don't want to get into a position where we're allocating money to things that then don't happen, and we've turned other things down, and that does concern me. So I thought what we decided was we wouldn't be taking bids other than small bids, you know, the normal small funding things, and that we just look at the things like the CCTV cameras, the Christmas lights, the things that the council actually, we fund the council to provide, and so we know roughly where we are.
Yeah, that was my understanding.
Yeah.
Lizzie's saying yeah.
That's fine. Sorry, Andrew, you're correct there. There were just a couple of details that that passed through to you, Mike, of people who wanted to know when the deadline was or something. Would you be able to lay out the position to them in terms of knowing when the event is, etc.?
Yeah, are you thinking of things like summer fairs going forward, where you just need a bit more planning in advance? I think those are the things we could include in fencing just a little bit of money for, so that there's the guarantee that later in the year, you know, there's money there, and then we can still go through that process of taking the application from the group 1 or 2 months before the start date, with a view to approving it, knowing that we've already got the money ring fenced, and try and tackle it that way. But I will speak to I'll speak to the Farsley Festival as well, and just have a chat with them about that.
Okay, anything else anybody wants to raise very quickly? Take that as a no. Thank you very much, everybody, and good